It was an age of dire struggle, when faith, loyalty, and basic survival could be challenged at any time. Alliances had to be formed, sometimes born of honor and courage, and at other times of greed and fear. Often, conditions would make it seem impossible to know the difference. They were the secret brotherhoods founded with the Crusades 1,000 years ago. There were three orders of God's soldiers: the Knights of St. John, the Knights Templars, and the Teutonic Knights. They were the appointed guardians of the true faith, sworn to protect Christendom against all enemies of the cross. They went to war in the name of Christ, building empires, amassing fortunes, destroying enemies, real and imagined, and changing the course of human history forever. Generations of knights, dedicated to charity in the name of our Lord the Poor, were tainted by bloodshed and betrayal in the pursuit of political power. Their legacy is a tale of idealism, corruption, and redemption that crisscrosses the centuries and the world's great turning points. From the fall of the Ottoman Empire to the American War of Independence, from the Napoleonic Wars to the rise of Nazism and the fall of the Soviet Empire. These are the brotherhoods, still making history today. The Knights of St. John, the oldest of the brotherhoods, was founded as a hospitaller order to care for the poor and the sick who visited the Holy Land during the Crusades. They owe their existence to a group of adventurous merchants from Amalfi in Italy, and to a religious frenzy that swept Europe in the year 1000. Jerusalem was thought to be the navel of the world. Whoever walked where Jesus had walked would have all of his sins forgiven and would sit beside him on Judgment Day. When a French noblewoman brought the purported thumb of St. John the Baptist back to Maurienne, most of the town traveled to Damascus to see his embalmed head. The relics of Christianity were thought to be imbued with supernatural powers, and in the Holy Land one could see the spear of Longinus that had perforated the chest of Jesus, the crown of thorns, and maybe even touch the true cross on which Christ had died. Whole embassies would make dangerous journeys in the hope of securing a drop of the holy blood, a fragment of the true cross, or teeth, nails, and bones of saints, prophets, and martyrs to be housed in the churches of Europe. The Muslim occupation of Christian territories, such as Syria, Palestine, and Spain, had gone on for almost 4 centuries. Muhammad had preached respect for all faiths. Muslim rulers were tolerant and did not desecrate the holy shrines. However, Turkish tribes started impinging upon the Fatimids of Syria, believing that the Christians were helping the Turks. The Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim began persecuting Christians. This was the excuse that the Pope needed to launch a crusade. Christian relics were no longer accessible. The birthplace of Christ had to be rescued. Perhaps the hidden reason was the threat of Islamic culture and its relentless expansion. The Muslim world had flourishing trade along the great caravan routes, stretching from India to Spain. Cities like Baghdad, Damascus, and Aleppo were bigger than Rome, Paris, or London. and were great centers of culture and learning. In 1054, the papacy had lost control of the Eastern Church of Constantinople, the capital of Byzantium. Byzantium was thriving, while wars and bad harvests had been ravaging Europe for several decades. On November 27, 1095, Pope Urban II rallied the kings of Europe at Clermont in France.
The Turks, a race of people alien to God, has taken over the land of the Christians. What a disgrace if a race so degenerate and despicable should prevail upon our Christian people. If you want to save your souls, cast off instantly as knights of Christ and go forward to the Holy Land.
This was a society of true believers, living daily on the edge of disaster. Faith was the only hope. War was now a religious service, and dying in Jerusalem would guarantee immediate entry to heaven. Hordes of people, gripped by religious fervor, marched to Jerusalem. The merchants of Amalfi, a shipbuilding town in southern Italy, had been venturing east, bringing spices and silk back to Europe. The opportunity to ferry pilgrims to the Holy Land meant they could collect the passage and open new trade with the Muslim world. They quickly built new fleets, and soon they had the exclusive franchise for the transport of pilgrims and troops. The expedition was an immense movement of men across Europe. It is estimated that between 60 and 100,000 people joined the First Crusade in 1096. 3 years later, after many wars against local armies, defection, starvation, and disease, the ragged crusading armies reached Jerusalem. On Friday, July 8, 1099, a solemn procession wound round the path that surrounded the city. The priests and bishops of the crusade came first, bearing the cross and the holy relics, the holy lance, and the arm bone of St. George. The princes and the knights followed, then the foot soldiers and pilgrims. After several cycles of fasting, prayers, masses, and marches, the city fell to the Crusaders. Ibn al-Athir, an Arab chronicler of the time, reported on the atrocities committed by the Franks, as all the Crusaders were called.
The population of the Holy City was put to the sword, and the Franks spent a week massacring Muslims. They killed more than 70,000 people in Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Ibn al-Qalanisi, another historian, noted,
Many people were killed. The Jews had gathered in their synagogue, and the Franks burned them alive. May peace be upon them.
With their newly acquired wealth, the Amalfitan merchants built a hostel and hospital with 2,000 beds. It was the first and largest building of this kind in the world. The merchants, the nobles, and the monks committed to taking up arms in the defense of the hospital and the roads in Palestine. The new order of Hospitallers was born, uniting the military and the monastic ideals. In 1113, Pope Pascal issued a bull, an official proclamation, establishing the Order of the Knights of St. John, soldiers of Christ, as a military order, and the 8-pointed cross of the town of Amalfi became their symbol. The massacre of Jerusalem had spurred Islam to a new level of fanaticism. The Prophet had said, "The sword is the key to heaven and to hell." The armies of Islam regrouped and led damaging attacks on the fragile Christian kingdom. The rulers of the Latin state divided by internal conflict, knew the difficulty of monitoring such a long battle line. Their survival was constantly threatened, and the only force that could be relied upon was the elite corps of the Hospitallers. They were given the castle of Beth Giblin. Then 5 more